biggest earthquake in a century rocks the East Coast. So how would America's crumbling infrastructure stand up to an even bigger jolt? The rock is cooking.
By me officially, publicly endorsing you both.
The endorsement that I made years ago with Biden was one I thought was the best decision for me at that time. Am I going to do that again this year? That answer is no.
Biden's tough week only gets tougher while Donald Trump prepares to rake in a record haul in Palm Beach. The race for the White House is going full throttle. New warnings.
فساد برانگیز آمریکا در این منطقه.
Iran's Revolutionary Guard vows death to Israel and death to America on Friday. How far will America go if Iran carries through with its newest threats? And look up ahead, from Texas to Maine, preparing for a total eclipse of the sun. We go along with NASA for an up-close and personal look. But remember, you gotta wear shades.
I'm doing all right, getting good grades. The future's so bright.
Hello, everyone. It's Friday. I'm Elizabeth Pran, filling in for Leland tonight. Welcome to the fairest show on television. A lot of breaking news to get to on this Friday, including a major rumble in the New York metropolitan area and up and down the Northeast. A 4.8 earthquake hit this morning. Residents felt the shake from high rises down to the subway system. It was the largest earthquake to hit the New York area since 1783. And at the center of it was Trump's New Jersey Golf Club, right at the epicenter of the quake. But tonight we begin with a very big weekend in the presidential race, a pretty seismic statement from none other than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He spoke to Fox News today saying he will not be endorsing President Biden as he did in 2020.
Endorsement that I made years ago with Biden was one I thought was the best decision for me at that time. And I thought back then, when we talk about, hey, I'm in this position where I have some influence, and it's my job then. I felt like that then. It's my job now to exercise my influence and share with this is who I'm going to endorse. Am I going to do that again this year? That answer is no.
The announcement, really not the best ending of a fairly tumultuous week. In terms of optics, President Biden is dealing with sinking poll numbers in some swing states, but he also seems to be losing some support over the advance in Israel. We're going to have more on that in a moment with Ambassador John Bolton. Meanwhile, former President Trump, on the other hand, had a pretty good week. He's basking in the glow of money. He's set to hold a $43 million fundraiser in Palm Beach this weekend. So joining us now, NewsNation political contributor Chris Hahn and Lauren Wright, associate research scholar in politics at Princeton University. I'm really excited for you both to be joining us tonight because I think it'll be quite lovely. So Chris, I do want to start with you. We had a fundraiser last weekend with the Biden team. We have a fundraiser this weekend with the Trump team, but we are seeing slightly different results. Do you care? Do you think that's important?
One, I do not believe that he will raise $43 million this weekend at Mar-a-Lago.
Okay.
I'll believe it when I see it. And whatever money he raises, half of it's going to go to his legal defense anyway. Another half is going to go to something else that's not campaign related. He's got money problems, and he will continue to have money problems. As for the polling, look, there are some good spots for Biden. There are some bad spots for Biden. What I do see is an economy that's improving, 15 million jobs created under Biden, millions of jobs lost under Trump. I think the message is going to start to change in this country over the next couple of months. And if we're still here having this conversation about bad poll numbers in October, well, then I'll worry about it. But today, not so much. And as for The Rock, I think this has more to do with the box office than the poll box.
Oh, okay. I do want to talk to that. But, Lauren, I want to circle back because I am interested to get your take on the fundraising, because these are big numbers. Yes, we'll see it if we do see the $43 million. But if we talk about the 26 from last weekend, to me that seems like crossing the finish line. It feels like we're drinking water out of a spigot here. These are big numbers. We're not October. We're not even into the summer yet. What are your take on some of these big donors?
That's right. There's a ton of energy here, including from the donor class, but I think Chris's assessment is very fair. You know, any fundraising that Donald Trump does will be seen in the context of, but how many millions of dollars in legal fees does he have? And that's a fair question, frankly, for his base that is contributing for Republican donors. And Democrats will definitely use that against him and are probably operatively smart to do so.
And I want, Chris, I do want to point out here, it says Democratic candidates have raised more money in support of the White House, more than their Republican counterparts in all election cycles since 2004. So that being said, it's not necessarily an indication of a potential W or a potential loss, but I do want to hear your take on how much money we are seeing right now. The energy of the election, are we going to see that drop? I mean, we still have quite a bit of time to go.
This is going to be a multi-billion-dollar election. Both parties are going to come out swinging. I could see the meeting at Trump, headquarters after the $26 million fundraiser Biden had last week. We need to do $43 million. That's exactly what happened in that moment. So he put out a press release saying he's going to raise $43 million tomorrow. But look, I don't think money is going to be the issue for these candidates. They're both going to have a lot of money. It's what they do with it that's going to matter. When elections are decided by 40,000 votes among 4 or 5 states, ground games matter. The Republicans have been shutting down their outreach offices. That should be a signal of alarm for Republicans. Democrats have been opening up outreach centers, working on their ground game. That is where this race will be won, especially in the swing states.
Okay, Lauren, I want you to respond to that, but also I do want to circle back on the endorsement with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, because there was much to do about Taylor Swift and her perhaps promoting the presidency. You know, he is a big name, and the fact is he spoke very bluntly to Fox News about really his irritation with these woke policies. Do you think that there will be a ripple effect?
I'm not sure about the ripple effect, but I know one thing from my own research. The Rock is a big political force for himself. He's a very viable candidate, hypothetically, himself. He has huge name recognition, huge likability. People watch him. And I do think this is an indictment of Joe Biden, because the same election is basically happening as 2020 with the same 2 candidates in 2024. And the fact that he's not endorsing the same candidate is very notable and very important, and I never underestimate the influence of celebrities in our political process. They know all the fundraisers. They've got that built in. They have a ton of resources, Elizabeth, so it's one of my favorite topics.
Okay, but when you talk about, so you're saying the ground game, actually, you feel like the Republicans have an advantage? Are you responding to Chris in that?
As far as the ground game, I think Democrats, frankly, have a lot to lose here. I mean, they're running against a 91 criminal count candidate who lost the last election, tried to stay in office. He's a very alienating person to a lot of Americans, and he's still winning in almost every poll. That should be an alarm bell to Democrats just as much as what Chris is saying about Republicans.
You know, Chris, and on the heels of that, also the things happening across the globe. So, yes, you can respond to that. But when you talk about ground game, and you also talk about the Democratic policies, and also even the foreign policies, the opinions of Democrats, and when you look at that in relation to the ground game, how do they win?
Democrats are going to win. Joe Biden's going to win. This election is going to be a lot like the election of 1980. It's going to be really close till the end. And then the ground is going to drop out from underneath Donald Trump sometime in October. It's 1980 in reverse, if you will. And I fully expect that to happen, because the American people, the more they see Donald Trump, the less they like him. Right now, they're thinking about 2019. They forgot about 2020, the worst year in this country that most people have been alive for.
All right, I'll let you respond to that, Lauren.
Well, I just think the more people see of Joe Biden, they've got some concerns too, Chris. I'm sure you'd agree with that.
Yeah, right, without a doubt. They're concerned that he's old. They were concerned Reagan was old in 1984, and then you know what? They said,
and
we're going to go with
nimble, a lot more cognitively nimble. Sure.
Well, and I also... You know what? Okay, I do. Before I let you go, and I know I'm getting a rap in my ear, but I do want to put up this headline, and we saw this talked about. There was a number of Democrats who have worked to rename a federal prison in Miami after Donald Trump. This is a little bit of a tit for tat after we saw Republicans and the Dulles airport. I can't leave without getting at least both of your opinion in 10 seconds or less on this. Is this child's play? Is this why Congress has such a low approval rating? Why are we spending the time renaming any building after anyone?
Not important,
that
but
is
smart strategy for Democrats.
First
class trolling.
That is first-class trolling. Keep it up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I would appreciate. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of voters are saying, "Wait a second, what are we spending? What are we spending our time on? What are we spending our taxpayer dollars on?" All right. Well, thank you both for joining us. I'm certain that we'll have similar conversations between now and November. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so no fundraiser for President Biden this weekend, who spent this afternoon, visiting the site of the Francis Scott Key Bridge disaster. Biden was joined at the disaster site by Maryland's Governor Wes Moore, who talked about the need for federal dollars to get the port and the city of Baltimore back up and running.
Now, I know our state's largest city is being tested right now, but Baltimore's been tested before. We get knocked down, we stand back up, and we dust ourselves off, and we move forward. That is what we do. And the people of Maryland are grateful to have a full partner in this work like President Biden.
NewsNation Washington correspondent Kelly Meyer is here. Hey, Kelly.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's interesting seeing those two together on stage.
Yeah, I think it was really amazing because we've talked a lot about him on the stage. I'm talking about the governor there. He's really sort of been a rising star in Washington. So what are we hearing about him?
Yeah, certainly. Seeing those both the two politicians, the two Democratic politicians on stage, he's certainly been called this rising star, using that phrase, really giving it new meaning. He's young, he's charismatic. He's all over this response to this first real test in his tenure. But that isn't the top thing on his resume, really. He has served in the U.S. Army. He was deployed to Afghanistan. He, of course, is the first black mayor in Maryland and one of the first black mayors. I think there has only been governors in the country. And he was the CEO and founded a nonprofit to help those that are in poverty. He certainly has a resume that's been growing throughout his career. He got into politics. He gave a speech during the 2008 Democratic National Convention supporting Barack Obama. And now he is here talking with the White House, pushing for those federal dollars. President Biden promising to get that funded 100%. He's going to push for that from Congress next week. But there was an interesting exchange between the governor. He joined our Chris Cuomo last night, talking about the economy. Obviously, they're talking about what could happen from the economic impact of this bridge collapse on Baltimore and the surrounding area. But Chris asked him about the overall economy and saying that people really aren't feeling what the Biden administration is saying is happening, and touting the change that they're seeing in terms of inflation and what the prices you're seeing at the grocery store. And in some ways, the governor agreed and says he was sensing that too. I want to play a little bit of what he had to say.
To me, I feel that there's a bite in the grocery store. To me, it feels like everything's more expensive and inflation is killing me. What do you say to them? And are you sensing that?
We are sensing it. And also I tell people that not only do I understand, I feel it as well. Because, here's the reality. Is I don't come from the political world, so I do understand that in some cases that dynamic of showing that even in our state, for example, now we have one of the fastest moving. We've jumped 20 slots in economic momentum. Baltimore City, for example, has the 8th fastest growing economy inside the country. But if people don't feel that, then those stats and the data does not mean much.
Now, it's interesting he says there that he doesn't come from the political world, which is something that we also heard from another star on the other side, former President Donald Trump. Elizabeth?
You're right. Kelly, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, so Iran vows to punish Israel, threatening a missile strike. Israel has canceled leave for all of its combat units. Is the violence we have seen up till now just the tip of the iceberg in the Middle East? Ambassador John Bolton joins us next. Plus, have you followed this story? 2 moms who vanished over the weekend in one of the most desolate areas of the Oklahoma Panhandle. The police haven't said much since revealing they suspect foul play. The clock is ticking and there are still no answers. So what do we know? That's ahead. All right, welcome back. Of course, we're following breaking news in the Middle East, live pictures of Jerusalem, where it's now 2 in the morning. As you can imagine, the entire nation of Israel is still on the red alert. The CIA issued a 48-hour warning of an attack from Iran. The commander-in-chief of an Islamic Guard promised a retaliation attack after Israel carried out airstrikes on an Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria. 2 generals died, others as well. Today, thousands of Iranians held funerals for those generals, along with rallies for Al-Quds Day, an annual pro-Palestinian event that symbolizes resistance. It's taken place for more than 4 decades. At the same time, the IDF announced it fired 2 officers after 7 aid workers were killed in Gaza by a drone strike. The IDF said it was accidental. There's also new details on the phone call between President Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu. The president told the prime minister that if there's not a change in the course of action going forward in Gaza, that the U.S. will no longer support the ally. When reporters questioned President Biden about that, he seemingly scoffed.
Did you threaten to stop military aid to Israel? I asked them to do what they're doing. You think about the hostages? Are you abandoning Israel? What are you about, man? Are you abandoning Israel?
Is that a serious question? Joining us now is Ambassador John Bolton, former assistant to the president for national security affairs. Ambassador, I'm so grateful that you're here. I suspect it's not the first time that you and I have had a conversation when we've seen Iran chanting death to Israel, death to America. Is this different than conversations we've had in the past?
Well, I think so. I think this is a very serious point, and the president's dismissing the question, are you abandoning Israel, is really quite surprising, because there is now a risk, I think, of an Iran retaliation directly against Israel, and we don't know what it might be or what extent it might really bring the region closer to direct Israel-Iran conflict. But the fact is, we've been close to it because of the nature of what the threat that Israel faces, most of which comes from Iran, in Gaza, in the north from Hezbollah. This attack on the consulate in Damascus was not simply eliminating several top leaders of the Iranian Quds Force. It also crossed an Iranian red line. They said, we will not tolerate any attacks on Iranian soil. And the soil of an embassy compound is considered to be the sovereign territory of the embassy. Now, of course, Iran crosses whatever red lines it wants, but now Israel has crossed one of theirs. So the extent, the nature of this Iranian response is going to be very important, could be very dangerous. It could be they back off. It could be they're intimidated by what Israel may do. So we'll have to wait and see.
You know, initially the CIA had that 48-hour tentative deadline, and now some of the reports are saying perhaps early next week. Obviously, we don't know. Like you said, there's intelligence that something is coming. There's not necessarily intelligence as to where and when and what. I think every parent, every human in America is saying, what will it take to get U.S. boots on the ground? So what is the U.S. threshold?
Well, if, for example, there were a direct attack on Israel from Iran, then I think the U.S. would definitely get involved to help protect Israel. If the response came in the force of missile or drone attacks from Hezbollah in the north, I think it's less likely. But Israel's in a very difficult position, and it's bogged down in Gaza. You can see what the administration's trying to do to slow its effort to eliminate Hamas. At the same time, the threat from Hezbollah in Lebanon and Syria is much more serious militarily. And if Hezbollah fires barrages of missiles or drones that overwhelm Israel's air defenses, there could be a serious threat and potentially enormous civilian casualties. So Israel lives in a dangerous neighborhood. It's in a vulnerable position now. And this, frankly, is not the time for the United States to be calling into question our support for Israel's right to self-defense.
Right. I think if you're a consumer of anything Middle East, you realize that there are so many heads on the snake. It is sometimes difficult to keep it clear. And I think my question, and forgive me if this is repetitive, is there an opportunity for it to stay regional, for it to say sort of proxy? I mean, it was just Monday that we recommitted additional weapons. So whether or not we want to admit it, obviously we are very much invested. So is there a way that it would stay sort of contained?
Sure. I think if Iran doesn't really respond in a vigorous way, that would be an indication that they don't want to see further attacks on Iranian territory. Iran has been dialing up or dialing down the activity of the various terrorist groups to suit its agenda, which is not discernible to us. After 170 attacks on American personnel in Iraq and Syria after October 7, a strong American response against Iranian assets in Iraq has largely stopped those attacks. But I think that's an example of how Iran is really controlling this situation overall.
Before I let you go, we heard from UN members today a plea for peace, and then we saw a lot of finger pointing from countries such as Russia, really blaming Israel. Your take on that, the optics of all of that?
Well, I think those who are pointing the finger at Israel are ignoring who started this, who's caused the heartache, who has the moral responsibility. It's all Hamas. This brutal cynicism, not just the attacks of October 7th, but exposing their fellow residents of Gaza, civilians, to danger simply to protect Hamas leadership and the Hamas fighting capability is itself a war crime. If people want a ceasefire in Gaza, how about calling on Hamas to surrender?
Yeah, and sometimes I think we really do lose sight that there are still hostages. There are still people underground, and we don't know what's happening to them. And it's something that sometimes I do feel as if we lose sight. So, Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to be with you again.
Glad to be with you again.
All right, coming up after the break, the latest on this is a very desperate search for two missing moms who just vanished in a remote area of Oklahoma. Speculation on what happened to them is certainly running wild. Police reportedly can just say that they hope that the women are still alive today. We're going to have more on that story coming up after the break. Welcome back. Have you followed this story? It's not only suspicious, it's now a regional search after state investigators were asked to get involved. These two women on your screen, Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly, could be in extreme danger. Not a word from either of these mothers since the end of March. So we are closing in on a week here, but there are some twists and turns in the story. So stay with me. We're gonna walk through it together. So let's go back to March 30th. This is when Texas County, Oklahoma officials say the duo is missing. They sent out a social media blast with descriptions and photos. This after Butler's husband found the small blue SUV vehicle and called police. So the two are estranged. They're no longer married. His family has custody. Veronica does have visitation rights. Reportedly, it's a fairly contentious situation. Kelly, a local pastor's wife, rode alongside for support. The two are reportedly acquaintances. They're not necessarily close friends. So let's go back to our timeline now. Just one day later, March 31st, police brought in Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation due to, quote, the suspicious nature of the case. So fast forward to this Wednesday. That state group announced the evidence obtained from the car, quote, indicates foul play. It's more than we've heard from authorities in a week's time, but they didn't include details like what they found in the car. For some context here, the car was found in a very rural area. You can see on your screen, it's just south of the Kansas border. So we have not heard from the family during this time. It's very tumultuous, and obviously time is of the essence. Leads are reportedly pouring in. NewsNation Brooke Schaefer has the very latest. Hi, Brooke.
Yeah, hey there. A lot of leads and a lot of tips we've heard are pouring in. We've also heard some rumblings of some possible activity in the case. But so far, investigators telling me there are no updates on the search for these two missing moms. The rumors that we are hearing, investigators saying there's no truth to them as of right now, potential suspects in the case. Jillian and Veronica have been missing for almost a week now. They went missing last Saturday. They seemingly vanished in broad daylight on the way to pick up Veronica Butler's kids. Their car, as you mentioned, found abandoned on the side of the road. The two women were from a small town here in Kansas. They went missing near the Kansas-Oklahoma border. Tonight, the small town where they live very much on edge and concerned as we approach 1 week since these two moms went missing. Earlier today, they held a vigil in the downtown area of Hugoton, Kansas, right outside Veronica Butler's shop. It's now closed until further notice. They prayed for the safe return of these two women. They put up some yellow ribbons on Main Street, but definitely a lot of concern and a lot of fear. These moms have been missing again since Saturday. Elizabeth.
I know that's sort of what's unbelievable here. I mean, we're heading into the weekend, right? Investigators have been fairly tight-lipped, but you can imagine with people living in the town, they don't have any suspects.
Yeah, and that's really the concern here, that there isn't a whole lot of information coming out from investigators on where they stand right now. I've been calling the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation several times, pretty much every day this week that we have been here. And the last update that we got from them was that they now suspect foul play in the disappearance of these two moms. According to investigators, they said they now have some evidence either in or around that abandoned car, leading them to believe there is foul play in all of this. But as of tonight, there are no arrests, no suspects in this case, and no word on where these two moms could be. But investigators told me they are still hopeful these women are alive. Elizabeth?
Wow, what a story. Thank you so much, Brooke. We're going to stay on it because obviously I can't imagine what it's like to be one of these kids without their mother. Thank you so much. So let's expand more on some of the challenges of these type of investigations. I want to bring in NewsNation's law and justice contributor and former special agent with the FBI, Jennifer Coffendorfer. Jennifer, I'm so grateful that you're on this story. Whenever there's a mystery, I always think of you right away. I don't actually know where to begin because we're not hearing from the family, but that could mean a myriad of things. That could also mean that the authorities are asking them not to speak. But we're kind of at a loss here when you think about all of the children that are impacted, no sign of these mothers, and really no information provided to the public.
Right. Authorities are very close-lipped, but behind the scenes, they are working to interview all the witnesses that are in and around this case, meaning the people who are related to both of these individuals who are missing. Remember, Veronica is the mother, and she was accompanied by Jillian as really a monitor because although Jillian had visitation rights, they had to be supervised. And recall that Veronica's husband, or former husband, is in a rehab facility in Oklahoma City. So certainly all these individuals are going to be interviewed in and around that family structure.
You know, Jennifer, when they said on Wednesday that there was foul play around the car, and I understand that investigations they do we've talked about this time and time again. They need to do their job without any public hindrance. At the same time, can you tell us if the car was in the car accident? Can you tell us if the doors were open and it was just abandoned? Can you tell us if there were cell phones or if there was blood? Can they give us a little bit more? And could that also help the investigation with additional tips or no?
Well, I will say this, Elizabeth. When I hear foul play based on what was found in and around that car, to me, that's police speech for there was likely blood and or a disorganized scene at that car. In other words, sign of a struggle. That's what that means to me when I hear that language. And I think that's why they are convinced there is foul play involved.
As an investigator, you said, do you start with the family? So do you start with the fact that that there was a family member, obviously that there may be a battle there, a custody battle, so maybe it's a contentious situation, but he was allegedly one of the first ones at the scene. That could be because they didn't show up to the birthday party. Does that give you pause?
Well, it does give me pause. Anytime somebody finds the vehicle, you also are going to start with them. But in the same light, it makes a lot of sense. This is a very rural, very abandoned type area, and he was likely trying to track the likely route to Eva, Oklahoma. So it makes sense that he would have come across this car concerned about them. So that part actually does make some sense, but they're always going to start with the inner circle. For this to be just a random act of violence is a very low probability.
Okay, I'm getting a rap in my ear before I let you go in 10 seconds or less, the fact that it's been almost a week.
Yeah, and the fact that it's been a week just really concerns me that we are going to be able to find these two women alive, but we have to maintain hope because they haven't been found, but it's not looking good with each day that ticks by.
I'll tell you what, Jennifer, I know they're shielding the kids in this scenario, but I don't know about you. I can't even get a cup of coffee or go to the restroom without my kids. So I just pray to the high heavens that these women get home. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
All right, next up, the earthquake that rocked the Northeast. We've been talking about it all day, and a reminder that these seismic events can happen just about anywhere.
I spoke to the governor. He thinks everything's under control. He's not too concerned about it. The governor of New Jersey, so things are all right.
Just about everyone by surprise. Well, that'll wake you up on a Friday. The epicenter of this earthquake was near Lebanon, New Jersey, and according to the United States Geological Survey, this was the strongest recorded in the Northeast in more than a decade. New York's Governor Kathy Hochul had this to say.
We've not identified any life-threatening situations, but we are certainly asking our local law enforcement and emergency services teams to be on guard for that as well. But again, we are going to be reviewing all potentially vulnerable infrastructure sites throughout the state of New York that is critically important in the aftermath of an event like this.
John Vidali, Dean's Professor of Earth Sciences at USC and a former director of the Southern California Earthquake Center, joins me now. Professor, I am grateful for you. I assume you're not a betting man. If you were, though, nothing wrong with that. Would you bet on the Northeast?
Would I bet on the Northeast? I like the Northeast. I would not have bet that there's going to be an earthquake today, and I'll bet there's not going to be another earthquake like this for a few years. It's a rare occurrence. I'm sure it woke a lot of people up over there.
Yeah, so with your expertise, is it that we can't control the planet and that, you never know what's going to happen? Is that it's densely populated? What is your take from today, from an expert's perspective?
Well, it's not a surprise. Every century we get a couple of earthquakes around New York City like that. And, we had 3 or 4 in California last year. There's one in Texas, one in Oklahoma this year. There was a magnitude 5. So it's not a surprise, but they come so infrequently that, it's a good time to check to make sure everything's held up with this mild shaking. There could be bigger earthquakes someday. Every 100 years there probably will be. So, it's good to keep people alert. That's what today's event should have done.
I don't want to belittle it because I'm sure, people were scared. We didn't, you can't predict them, right? But what's the takeaway here? What can people learn from this? Is it an opportunity to be more educated that, you just never know that the planet is made up of plates and that we can't predict what's going to happen?
Yeah, that's quite right. Earthquakes are, we can't have no clue of predicting them. All we can say is after one happens, it's a little bit more dangerous with the aftershocks, but, probably nothing more will come in this case. It's like the hurricanes and typhoons and volcanoes. The Earth's a lot more powerful than we are. Fortunately, today probably there was very little impact except to wake people up to the possibilities of nature.
Can you explain to our viewers how an earthquake is not necessarily something that you can predict, but you can put some type of is it likability or
probability.
Likeliness that it could happen? Probability.
Yeah, likelihood. That's what we approach it statistically. We have models. We have to have models because the engineers demand it to know how to build the buildings. And so the probability every year is about 1 in 50 in New York City for an earthquake like this, and probably 1 in 500 for a powerful enough earthquake to really do some damage. So we do know the odds. We just don't know exactly when they're going to happen.
All right, and before I let you go, what's one piece of advice for people, after today?
Well, with earthquakes and everything else, it's good to have some supplies, some emergency water, some food, to have contact information to reach relatives. For earthquakes in particular, what we say in the West is to make sure your water heater is strapped to the wall. Because the last thing you want is that to fall off and the gas hose to break and it to ignite. Just a lot of basics, but basically a reminder to get educated about the problems.
Yeah, you never know, right? I did read somewhere that said, maybe people need to remember that if you have those big bookcases, no matter where you are, anchor them to the wall. Just a little things, you just never know. Today's a good reminder of you never know. So, Professor Vidali, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate that. Very interesting story. Today was interesting.
Okay, very good. Yeah, thank you. My pleasure.
Yep. And still ahead, we have an interesting week next week. Don't look up, at least not without eye protection. I don't know about you, but everyone I know is going eclipse crazy with just 3 days to go until, we're in position. We're going to tell you how to get ready and where the best viewing is going to be.
Eclipse will totally block out the sun over parts of America. And we're all looking forward to having one brief moment when you can look up into the sky and see something besides the door of a Boeing airplane plummeting toward the ground.
You can't help but laugh, right? It's the Daily Show calling it like it is. And while Boeing airplane safety has been hot on everyone's mind, many Americans will be traveling this weekend on planes to get the best view of the sun, quite literally, for the total eclipse of the sun. Of course, while wearing eye protection. But from Dallas, Texas to Burlington, Vermont, people will be traveling across America to watch the moon cover the sun. The last total solar eclipse was seen in America in 2017, and then after Monday, the U.S. won't be seeing one again until 2044. And while most Americans are grabbing their solar glasses and watching from the ground, NASA will be getting a bird's eye view of the otherworldly occurrence.
If you're looking to catch the April 8th total solar eclipse, you'll want to be somewhere with clear skies. For some scientists, that means heading above the clouds.
During the 2024 solar eclipse, the WB-57 airplanes will be flying at an altitude of about 50,000 feet, chasing the eclipse shadow over the coast of Mexico near Mazatlan.
For the team led by the Southwest Research Institute, this will be their second time chasing an eclipse. So they're using an improved camera setup.
We might not actually even know what we're going to see, and that's part of the excitement, is opening brand new discovery space and learning new things about the sun.
Just so much excitement. Joining us now is Denise Hill, NASA Strategic Communications and Outreach Lead. All right, Denise, tell me the plan for Monday. First of all, where are you going to be watching it? And then also, where is your team? Tell us more about the logistics. This is really cool.
So we are super excited. We have partnered with Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So I am currently in Indianapolis right now, getting ready for the eclipse. And our team is actually split. We have what we're calling sunspots all across the path of totality. But my team is here in Indy and then also in Dallas, Texas, where we'll be broadcasting live from both locations for the eclipse, but also from paths from places all across the path of totality.
So tell me about why, I mean, this is an obvious question, but why is Monday so exciting for you? Is it because of the length of the eclipse? I mean, if I'm not mistaken, for some folks, depending on where they're located, it could be more than 4 minutes. Is it the fact that it goes across the whole United States? I mean, what is about it? I mean, I guess there's so many things that you're probably excited about, right? But what is it for you?
For me personally, I've never seen a total solar eclipse, and I hear that it is earth-shattering, it is life-changing. I hear it's more than just like a spectacular thing that you see. It's something you experience kind of like with your whole body. All of your senses are in tune. I hear that like things can even go on inside of you emotionally, and some believe even spiritually. And then of course, from the science realm, we are so excited about the science that we're able to do, because during an eclipse, it's like the perfect laboratory environment, because we know exactly how long we have, we know exactly what's going to happen, and we can take measurements during that time. And then also it's like super unifying. Like everyone in the contiguous United States is going to at least see a partial eclipse. So it's something that regardless of socioeconomic status or color or race or any of that stuff, we're all going to experience this beautiful event together. So that's why I'm excited.
Okay, and I just, for our viewers to know, I think we only have about 10 seconds or less, Denise. You can still enjoy it if you're not in the path, right, for our viewers? And I know we're running out of time, but we can still enjoy it?
Yes. Partial eclipse across the contiguous United States, you'll still see something, and then we're going to be broadcasting live, so you can catch all of totality.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We are so grateful for you. We are very excited about Monday. Of course, for our viewers, you need to wear your glasses on Monday. We don't want anyone to do this dangerously. And we have special coverage starting at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central. And thank you for joining us on Balance tonight. Right now, we're going to be joined by Chris Cuomo. Thanks again.